when I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Take my hat off.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Done.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
Good morning. First name's Doni, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. We have with us the one, the only, the honorable Carl O. Snowden. Salute, sir. How are you?
Fine, my brother. Good morning. How are you?
Your hero's birthday was, what, 2 days ago?
Sunday. Malcolm's birthday was Sunday.
He said, I'd rather be who I am, a black man, than to claim membership with the most favored of any other race. I've been made sad when members of this or that particular race start claiming rights and privileges or certain badges of distinctions on the grounds that they belong to this or that particular race, regardless of their own individual worth or attainment. Merit, he said, is in the long run recognized and rewarded. I say that here not to call attention to myself as an individual, but to the race to which I am proud to belong.
Absolutely right. Malcolm was my hero, as you mentioned, but he was hero to millions of people. Anybody who loves freedom, justice, and equality loved Malcolm. Malcolm was one of those unique individuals. In fact, Doni, I tell people all the time, had it not been for Malcolm X, I would not be alive today. He literally saved my life.
Did you see that film? Regina King made it. Night in Miami.
I did with Sam Cooke, Muhammad Ali, and of course, Malcolm. Yes.
What a beautiful movie. And you saw all of them in roles that I wouldn't have otherwise imagined.
Donnie, one of the things that is a unique experience for people of my generation, in my lifetime, I literally saw giants walking the earth. I mean, can you imagine a world? I used to be a journalist myself. I did a radio program many years ago for a local radio station. And I remember the opportunity to have interviewed James Baldwin, Nikki Giovanni. I think of the people I've had the great privilege of meeting and talking with. Can you imagine how fortunate I was to have a Maya Angelou talk to me about what it was like to walk the streets with Malcolm, dance with James Baldwin, to laugh with Martin Luther King Jr. Just an amazing period. I did the last interview with a man named Elbridge Cleaver, which the public will know as the guy who wrote Soul on Ice. And I saw Elbridge Cleaver at the end of his life, a broken man. I saw what society could do and did do to him. I saw the effectiveness of the FBI. I tell people all the time, know your history. One of the things that people are stunned to learn is when I tell them that the man who's most responsible for Black people being in the FBI was a man that nobody would even give thought to, because they'd never realized he was the reason that the first black FBI agent was hired. He was hired personally by J. Edgar Hoover. And it was not in the 60s, it was in the 20s. His name was Marcus Garvey. And in order for them to infiltrate Marcus Garvey organization, they had to hire their first black FBI agent, which they did. And that's how blacks became members of the FBI, for being employed to spy upon a black organization and a black man.
You know, when you talk about our creativity as a people, my daddy, and I'm just rocking because I just feel their ancestors. I feel them in the backdrop. You know, I feel the songs going on right now. But my daddy told me a story about how they had to carry H. Rap Brown out of Cambridge in a casket.
Yeah. I actually was in Cambridge, Maryland just yesterday because we're calling on the town of Cambridge to join us in having a bridge at Choptank River, renamed in honor of Gloria Richardson. Gloria Richardson was a black woman who, during the H. Rap Brown era, just stood up to white racism and white supremacists. She died at the age of 99, but was an incredibly strong black woman. She originally was born in Baltimore City, but became nationally known as a result of her activities in Cambridge, Maryland, where she met the late U.S. Attorney Robert F. Kennedy and later Malcolm X. Incredible woman.
You know, we talked about on the last show the renaming of the bridge, and we didn't go into her name and how, if you weren't able to get the bridge named after Frederick Douglass, or was it Harriet Tubman? Who would you pick?
No, we were going to get the bridge named after Congressman Perrin Mitchell.
Congressman Mitchell.
Who was one of the giants that come out of Baltimore City. People know about Thurgood Marshall, of course, and people know about Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, but they really need to know that Perrin Mitchell, what an incredible public servant. In fact, to be frank about it, he's the last truly public servant that we've had. By public servant, I meant somebody who was absolutely dedicated to lifting up and empowering his people and improving his community. Today, too often, our elected officials don't want to be public servants. They want to be mini celebrities. They want to have their entourage. They want to be able to be treated like rock stars. That wasn't who Perrin Mitchell was. Perrin Mitchell was a man that many of us call PJ. You could see him in Western, on Pennsylvania Avenue. He literally could be reached out and touched. He was an incredible public servant. I admired Perrin Mitchell. I knew him well. It is a shame that, in my opinion, Baltimore City as a city has not done enough to remember Perrin Mitchell. They just recently, with some federal funds, preserved his home in Baltimore City. But there's no statue of Perrin Mitchell in a harbor, as there should be.
Is there a statue of Harriet Tubman in Maryland?
Oh, yeah. We've got plenty of stuff, plenty of statues now of Harriet Tubman. We have one here in Annapolis, which is near on Franklin Street, which is where the Banneker Douglas Museum is. In fact, we've just renamed it to include Tubman's name. But with Perrin Mitchell, unlike Harriet Tubman, Perrin Mitchell is...
We need one here in Baltimore with Harriet Tubman. You know what that would do for my people? They got it in Harlem. I get jealous when I go. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's okay to say, but I'm jealous we don't have our own Harriet Tubman statue at Pennsylvania and North. Like they got Adam Clayton Powell on 125th Street. Where's ours? Here in Baltimore.
Well, you also have in Baltimore, thank goodness, on Pennsylvania Avenue, Billie Holiday.
That's the statue make that woman look butt ugly. That statue is not pretty. I do not like it. I do not care for it.
Yeah. Well, you know, they say beauty.
She was a gorgeous woman, man. She looked butt ugly on there.
Well, I wish people knew more about her history, Doni, because if they
Eleanor Fagan was her name.
She was someone that the FBI opened up a file on. They tried to destroy her. I wish people knew more of the history of how law enforcement officials, even today, you can learn some things from the past. A lot of the entertainers today, a lot of the so-called hip-hop artists, the moguls, they better read the story of Billie Holiday and understand how government operates when they see you not operating in their best interests.
Mr. Snowden, I rarely do this, but because I got you on here, I got to do some shameless self-promotion. Unapologetically Black, and I am Black Wall Street, and I'm working on my third. and we need you in Baltimore. They're honoring me on June 26th, and we need you. Gotta be here. They're honoring me up at Coppin, where my journalism career started 30 years ago.
You send me an invitation. I'll be happy to come by. I too have written a book. It's called "Some People Watch Clocks, I Watch People," and it's really a commentary on where we are today. I wrote the book in memory of my mother, who lived to be 104 years old. And in the book, I predicted that Donald Trump would not be.
And how old are you? You only look like 45, 50.
Actually, I'm 70, and I'm proud to have reached that age. None of my heroes got to beyond the age of 39. Malcolm.
Think about that. Malcolm and Martin went in their 30s.
Martin died at 39. Medgar Evers died at 37. Fred Hampton died at 21. The people I most admire, frankly, are not around, and it's not by accident or coincidence. So I'm very, very delighted to be able to be here at the age of 70. And what I want to say about my mother at 104, my mother often said when I would call and said, "Mama, how you doing?" She said, "I woke up this morning. It's a blessing." And now I understand what she means, because waking up is not a guarantee. So where I'm at this stage of my life is getting people to understand the importance of maintaining their legacy, writing their own history. Doni, I want to congratulate you and commend you. You have put in something to writing, because 20 years from now, 30 years from now, somebody's going to come back and want to know, who was Doni Glover? And you've written your own story. You've been able to give your version of it. And one of the things I like to remind people of, because this happened in real life for me, and that's why I know it's important that we know our history. I had the great honor in 1984 to meet Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks at the time was in her 80s. As you know, she kicked off the civil rights movement when she was 42 years old in 1955. So we had Rosa Parks come to Annapolis to speak at a church, First Baptist Church, which she did. And I will never forget this as long as I live. Rosa Parks, was a small woman, spoke very softly, and people just wanted to touch her. She was a living history. And so she tells her story. Of course, she gets a standing ovation, not because she was an eloquent speaker, but because people knew what she represented. And this white reporter said to her, "Mrs. Parks, can you tell us why you refused to give up your seat to a white man in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama?" And I will never forget her response. In that quiet voice, she said, "Sir, you're wrong. I did not refuse to give up my seat to a white man. I refused to give up my dignity." Wow. It put a whole different twist on it. And that's why I know the importance of people telling their own story. Because for years, we've been told that she refused to give up her seat to a white man. And it made it as if the white man was the issue. And she understood it was our dignity, which is why Dr. King, the night she was arrested, would say to an overflowing crowd, "Sister Rosa, it's better we walk in dignity than ride in shame." It was an incredible moment. And again, coming full circle, we are very fortunate, those of us who've lived, to see some of the great heroes and sheroes come this way, people who've made a difference. Perrin Mitchell said to me and to a crowd once, "You don't believe racism in this America, you either found it dumb or dumbfounded." Perrin was a great, great public servant.
Give me a spiritual, man. Sing a spiritual for me. Give me a line.
I can't sing a spiritual, but I can share this with you. There is a gospel star. Her name was Mahalia Jackson, and she sings a song that's so inspirational for me. It's called "How I Got Over." And if people take the time and listen to Mahalia Jackson, it comes out of her inner soul, "How I Got Over." And when people think of their own lives, those who survived, oh, what a powerful, powerful song that is. I understand that song to mean the following: there is a power in the universe that put wetness in water, blue in the sky, and allowed birds to fly. When you plug into that power, all things are possible. I'm here because there is a God who was able to make some way out of nowhere. I am just really, really pleased to be living in the time that we're living in. These are very serious times, and it's going to take three things for us as a people to survive. And we've done it before. It's going to take faith, which we have. It's going to take family and friends. Those three F's are very necessary for us to survive. Faith is that thing that you can't see. You just know it's there. You feel it. Family you inherit. You don't get a choice who your family is. You inherit them. But friends, and I underscore this point, if you are lucky enough to have friends, you will
One
find
friend.
in the long run, there are very few.
If you get one friend, you're rich.
Yes, yes. You know, there are people who use the term friends and colleagues
Loosely.
They are not the same. I tell you what, if you want to know what friends is, ask Marilyn Mosby what friends are. Friends are the people who will not desert you. You know, when
Because things get a little funky.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Malcolm found out what a friend was. Martin Luther King Jr. found out what a friend was. Friends are far and few in between.
They showed in that what was it, Harlem, The Godfather of Harlem, they show where Bumpy was looking out for Malcolm.
Absolutely. And Martin Luther King Jr., which most people don't know this, was assassinated. And there's no question it was a conspiracy to do him in. Martin Luther King Jr. had left Memphis, Tennessee, and it was the FBI placing in black newspapers the following: that Martin Luther King Jr., they said, when he comes to Memphis, Tennessee, he doesn't stay at black hotels, he stayed at the white hotels. And he was staying at the Holiday Inn. And Dr. King was so moved by that criticism, he decided to move from the Holiday Inn, which gave him a lot more security. He went up to this place called Lorraine Motel, and the rest is history. Had he not went to Lorraine Motel, which was instigated by the FBI, he might have lived.
Oh, my Lord, 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 Lord. Mm-hmm. Well, you tell a story, Mr. Snowden. 14, 15 years old, FBI was following you.
Absolutely. And I learned a great deal. As you know, one of the things that I've had the great privilege of doing, I've obviously been an activist most of my life, but I also had the opportunity to work in government. I know how government works. I served on the Annapolis City Council for 12 years. I know how the legislative process works. I was appointed, as you know, the first civil rights director in the office of the Attorney General. So I've seen things from the inside that most people who view in this program will never know. I know how government works. I know how politics and law intersects. That's why when I watch what's going on with Donald Trump today, I see politics at work. I see how it works. I know how it works. And so there's not by accident or coincidence that one of the trials that was headed up by that Donald Trump was supposed to be going to, the one in Georgia, that trial has been postponed because of the appointment of a judge that he appointed. And it's been indefinitely postponed. That's not by accident. It's politics.
So I'm working on an editorial. It goes like this. I got the title, and I'm still working on how to present it. I might even have to pull in some AI, but the title is, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Black president, black governor, black senator, black mayor. What's in it for us?
That's very good. That's a very good editorial, and it raises questions. 50 years from now, when we look back, we have more political power than we've ever had. Will historians and those who will follow us say we used it wisely when we came to power? We're in a position to make things happen. And unfortunately, we're not utilizing the power that we have. There's so much we could do, so much we must do to make America more better than bitter. And there are things that I'm hoping as we move forward that Governor Westmore, we have a Black Attorney General, Anthony Brown, we have the first Black Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones, we have the largest delegation to the Maryland General Assembly in its history. There are more Black elected officials in Annapolis than anywhere else in the country.
We got the highest percentage in the country.
That's correct. And we have this opportunity that God has given us, and we shall see whether or not our leadership understands the importance of taking advantage of this moment. Time will tell.
They should have the testicular fortitude to change their middle name to reparations, for instance.
Yeah. Well, you know, part of it is, and for
don't be scared.
Yeah, those who are in part of the process, who understand how politics work in America, need to make a decision. And the decision is, do you want to go along and get along, or do you really want to bring real substantial change to the nation?
Because you can't do both.
No. There's no evidence in history of being able to do both. And that's what Malcolm understood. When he said it's the ballot or the bullet, all he was simply saying was, in American history, if you read history as I have, there are two things that have changed the course of history: the ballot and the bullet. The ballot changed the course of history. We were able to elect for the first time Barack Obama as president of the United States. The ballot changed the course of history when, for the first time, Adam Clayton Powell, who came out of New York City, was able to get elected and accumulated a tremendous amount of power. By the way, for young people who are interested in going into politics, there are three politicians I would strongly recommend that they take the opportunity to study, read, and learn about. One, of course, is Adam Clayton Powell, who was just a master when it came to understanding how the system worked. Another two people were two mayors, both of them just brilliant. One of them was a man named Marion Barry, who showed how politics and advanced the economic course of our nation, economic empowerment of our community. Another was a man named Harold Washington.
See, I thought you was going to say Maynard Jackson.
Maynard Jackson was an incredible leader as well, because what Maynard Jackson did for Atlanta was unbelievable. But the reason I mentioned Harold Washington in particular, he did something that I'm just so proud of. I happened to campaign for him. The night he won the election, he was the first to win a major.
In Chicago, you went to Chicago to campaign?
For Harold Washington. And he said something, Doni, that night that I will never forget. Can you imagine, this is in February. They had the elections in Chicago intentionally in February. It was a way of suppressing the black vote. But black people came out in record numbers on that particular night.
You think we can't stand the cold, huh? They don't know about Matthew Henson, do they?
Yeah, well, people...
They better go do their history. Admiral Perry did not find the North Pole. It was a black man from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Calvert County.
That's right. And one of the things that happened the night that Harold Washington was speaking, can you imagine this? A black man get elected for the first time in Chicago. Pandemonium had broken out. People screaming and yelling and just so full of joy. Here comes Harold Washington, and he finally quiets the crowd down. He says, I want to apologize to everybody in this crowd. People say, apologize? What is this man talking about? Apologize for what? And in Chicago, so you get the thrust of what he was saying, in Chicago, whenever they did major developments or major infrastructure work in Chicago, there was a sign that says, we apologize for the inconvenience. And what he was making reference to, as the new mayor elected in Chicago, he was going to do something that had never been done before. He was going to do major infrastructure work in Chicago on the south side, which is the poorest side of Chicago. And for the first time, black people are going to see signs that said, we apologize for the inconvenience. Because before that, it had taken place in another part of Chicago, and he kept his promise. He literally kept his promise. He repaired streets on the south side of Chicago. He brought resources there. And as a result of that, the people of Chicago loved him because not only did he make promises, he kept the promises he made. Incredible man.
This quote is from Michael Haney. Michael Haney, why don't you come on the show and share it yourself? I just emailed you the link in case you don't have it. Brown versus Board of Education, your thoughts? Anniversary 60th last week.
I actually just did a column on this particular anniversary, and he's right. May 17th.
Where's that column going? Is it on Be More? You sending it to BeMoreNews.com?
I can share it with you. Yeah, it appeared in last week in the Capital Gazette newspaper. But let me just say this, and I'd love to hear his comments if he's able to join us in this discussion. There is the academic experience. There are people who read about Brown versus Topeka, and there are those of us who lived through it. So having the lived experience, I can tell you that as a result of Brown versus Topeka, one of the things that many, many people are not aware of, unfortunately, In 1957, 3 years following the Brown versus Topeka, a man named Martin Luther King Jr. spoke in Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial. 6 years before the famous I Have a Dream, he gave another speech. And the speech in 1957 was called Give Us the Ballot. And if one would Google that speech, Give Us the Ballot, I would very much want to hear why he thinks it was the demise of Black power, when in fact, I believe that Board versus Brown was what led us to become more empowered as a community.
We have an election coming up for president. I'm hearing people on the right saying that they support
Trump.
Trump. Trump on one hand, Biden on the other. There are those that want to say they're the same people. I'd love to hear what you, the Honorable Carl Snowden, our civil rights, our own civil rights guru, not just in Anne Arundel County, not just in Annapolis, but throughout the state of Maryland, Prince George's County, Baltimore. You got roots all over this state. This is your state. You're our first unofficial Black governor up there with other giants. What are your thoughts?
Well,
who do we vote for?
First of all, anybody who thinks that Donald Trump and Biden is the same really don't know history. They just don't know history.
Well, they pinned the 94 omnibus crime bill on the Joe Biden, for one.
Right. Well, what you could do is, and I could do this all day with you, I could show people how it was Barack Obama during his presidency that put more drones in Africa than any president before him.
Killed Gaddafi.
Yeah, no president is perfect. But when you look at politics, it's a question of pragmatic. I mean, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for people to say that voting for Biden is like voting for Trump. That's as foolish as it could be. The fact of the matter is, Trump would have never put a Black woman on the Supreme Court, not of the kind that Biden put on the Supreme Court. And while Biden has his faults, if it's a choice between Biden and Trump, there really isn't any choice. I think the vast majority of people who understand what a Trump second administration would be know that you've got to support Biden from a pragmatic standpoint.
I will say this as a Black journalist, I got no access, maybe one invite in the 8 years of Trump at the White House. This White House understands the need to hire a Kevin Lewis, a Erica Lowe, a Roderica Applewhite to ensure that the Black press gets access just like the mainstream press. And I am so grateful for that. We did not get access through Trump. I didn't.
And not only you, a lot of people didn't. And April Ryan wrote a brilliant book about what it was like during the Trump years to be a Black woman asking the right questions. The truth of the matter is that, again, Biden is not perfect, but what Biden is an alternative to what would be a terrible if Trump was reelected. Trump has kept his promise, which is when he gets to power, he's got a program, it's a plan that's called 2025 plan. And anybody can Google the 2025 plan. It was done by the Heritage Foundation. And if Trump is elected, this is what he intends to implement. And the 2025 plan would take away a lot of the rights that people fought for, in many cases died for, if he comes to power. He's also talked about retribution. And I take him at his word. If he comes to power and get the power, he will be able to exercise retribution.
How does he get to run for president and Marilyn Mosby is threatened by going to prison?
Because of racism. I mean, it's really clear. I mean, in America.
And then they put a Black man on Marilyn Mosby. What's his name? Eric Barron.
Right. In America, there is something that no one will refute. There's not a single person will refute what I'm about to say, whether they're on the extreme right, extreme left, in the middle, no matter what their religion is. Nobody will dispute what I'm about to say. And that is that if Barack Obama had done 1/10 of 1% of what Donald Trump has been accused,
he'd be locked. They'd have shot him.
He would have not survived the presidency. Can you imagine what would have happened if at the end of the term of Barack Obama, he announced, Barack Obama, that his brother-in-law had got a $2 billion contract with Saudi Arabia? You know how many investigations would be going on? And in the case of Donald Trump, whose son-in-law did get the $2 billion contract with Saudi Arabia, there's not been one single investigation. into how that happened. And remember, he got it while he was in the White House. Clear conflict of interest. But again,
all right, so let's go to this major race, and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule. I mean, you remind me of my late dad. He never retired, if you ask me. But the U.S. Senate race, did you, for one, first of all, did you see that Angela Alsobrooks, in the beginning of this primary, did you foresee her spanking David Trone?
well, again, those who know history know that money has not always bought an election. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when a man named David Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller, ran for public office, and people thought he could buy the election. Black voters are much more sophisticated than people give them credit for. You can take all the commercials you want of having certain black faces saying vote for a certain candidate, but black people instinctively know who serves their best interest. And to Angela's credit, one of the things she had going for her is this is the time for black women to rise in ways that they have never risen before. I'm just amazed at what we're seeing nationally when it comes to leadership, particularly on the part of black women. Doni, were you as happy as I was to see the Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, spank Marjorie Greene Taylor publicly when she said to her, when Marjorie Greene said, take off those false eyelashes, and how she came back so brilliantly and made it crystal clear she's not going to be disrespected. I just think that's the sentiment that I see with a lot of black women around the country. The power to be able
Only thing nicer for me is if she would have got up and smacked her.
Well, she smacked her intellectually in other ways, and she's still, even today.
Yeah, don't hurt nobody. But the things that go on. Anyway, we I think we're being joined by Mr. Haney. Are you with us, Michael? This camera's not working. Where you at, Michael? Okay, so did you foresee Alsobrooks beating Trone? I missed that.
Yes, and she's going to beat Hogan. And here's the reason why she's going to beat Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan has a huge problem. His problem is the Trumpites are not going to go with him. The Trump people are not going to support Hogan for governor. They're not going to vote for Angela, but they're not going to vote for him either. And by staying at home on this or not voting in that particular election, it's going to benefit Angela. And just to make it crystal clear.
So you're saying that the Republicans in Maryland side more with Trump than they do with Hogan?
There's a large element that sides with Trump.
That's scary. It's saying I live around. Does that say I live around racists?
Yeah, that's what it says. But remember, with Trump, just don't forget this. With Trump, when Governor Hogan had selected his hand-picked successor, Kelly Schultz, Republicans deserted her in great numbers. That's how you got Cox, which later gave us Westmore. Brother Mike, how are you, sir?
Hey, Brother Snowden, how you doing, man? It's an honor and a privilege, man. I've been following you for decades. People don't know the sacrifice that you've made for this state, for this country, man. And I've admired you, and it's an honor to be here with you, man. Just an honor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your kind.
And I sincerely mean that, man. People don't know it's just been as recent as 10 years that they continue to mess with you. And that's what happens to our black leaders that speak the truth.
Most people don't know this. Most people know about the FBI during their surveillance, but we had a county executive, a guy named John Leopold, who personally ordered his police officers to stop me on all kinds of foolishness. And we eventually sued John Leopold. We won that lawsuit where we showed that he illegally used the police department in a manner that was actually criminal, doing all kinds of stuff.
And he wound up in some legal issues himself, didn't he?
He wound up going to jail. Yeah,
That's right.
Wound up going to jail. But one of the things I was saying before you came on that I really want to underscore is that black people really need to understand where we are. This is not a time for foolishness. This is a very serious upcoming presidential race that will change the course of history. Depends on how it goes. Why people say that Joe Biden is too old. And by the way, Joe Biden was not my first choice. He was not my second choice, third choice, or fourth choice. But when it came down to him or Trump, he was my only choice. And there's a safety valve.
Are they paying you, man? The Democratic Party ought to be paying you to stump. They got these off-brands out here. I'm sorry.
There is a safety valve that exists that white people and white supremacists know very, very, very well. And that is, quietly as it's kept, they're telling people that we can't elect Joe Biden because he won't complete his term because of his age. And therefore, we'll wind up with a black woman as president. We can't have that. And they're working night and day to get to white supremacists and racists the notion that's really not about Joe Biden, it's about this black woman who become president of the United States. And they're just doing everything they can to turn out the base of white racists to make sure that Biden does not get reelected. And by the way, he may not complete his term. That's not unforeseeable that he could not complete his term. He is up in age.
But you're absolutely right, Mr.
So I want to pose
that. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mr. Snowden, that it's precarious times for black people, and that's why we have to circle the wagon economically, educationally, crime and justice. And what I meant by Brown versus Board of Education, the demise of black people, before Brown versus Board, separate but equal was an issue. It was unequal, but separate is what you see in most countries and most cultures around this world. We had our own educational apparatus where most of our HBCUs supplied educators. We shopped in our own communities because we didn't have any choice. And once desegregation hit this country, the unintended consequence of the demise of the black economy, the black education system, HBCUs went down, black teachers, the numbers went down because whites were not going to allow them to teach in their schools. So where could they go? So those were the unintended consequences of Brown versus Board. And regardless of who the president is in this country, black people have to realize that they have to circle their own wagons and contribute to their own well-being first. Like it says, put the mask on yourself first and then help others. And we fail to do that. You mentioned the ballot and the bullet by Malcolm X. And Malcolm X called us chumps because we refuse to leverage our voting power for gains that we need instead of just continuing to hand it over to parties without true negotiations or benefit of our voting power. And you talked about Martin Luther King speaking about a black person could not be whole in 1959 when he gave that speech you referenced to, because I heard every word you say until black people had the power to vote. But we can't just show up and go out and just cast our vote because someone tells us to do so. We have to do our research and our homework and fix our own communities first and not necessarily have to depend on somebody to always do for us what they're not going to do anyway. We only see them every 4 years.
Well,
and
I
their
posed
agenda
this
comes
question
first.
earlier, Mike, that we've had a black president, we have a black governor here in Maryland, got a black senator nominee, a black mayor. What does that mean for the rest of us?
Well, let me say
It means nothing. It means nothing until we give them the power behind it. In Baltimore City, you have a black mayor, but we don't own real estate. We don't own the banks. And so therefore, special interests are going to ensure that we elect who it is that they want to serve their interests. And it won't happen until we begin to have our own financial, educational power in our communities. So we give our black elected official a basis of strength that they identify with, meaning white people.
So, Mr. Snowden, that begs the question of leadership. Are our elected officials qualified to lead? Sure, they can do the political thing, but we're talking about money for West Baltimore, money for Annapolis's black community, money for East Baltimore, West Baltimore, Park Heights, money. Pimlico got all of these black people out the Preakness wearing straw hats, sipping on black guy Susans. What about the money that was owed to the Preakness and the Pimlico community.
Let me just say this, and Mike, by the way, I commend your analysis, because one of the things that I said earlier, and I hope you picked it up, which is it's important that we tell our own story, give our own narrative. And I used the example of Rosa Parks talking about the struggle was not about, for example, getting arrested for setting with a white man, but refusing to give up our dignity. But Mike, here's one of the things that you and others who are listening can help with, is shaping the narrative. Because remember, people only know what they read and what they hear. And it's important for us to interpret events that's going on. I'll give just one example that people who know their history will instantly understand. The vast majority of people think that 2022, when the Supreme Court handed down its decision, Roe versus Wade, was when women lost reproductive rights. You can talk to anybody, everybody tells you that's when the Supreme Court took away the right of women to control their bodies. It's simply not true. And because people don't know their history, they buy into it. Here's when women lost the right to control their bodies. It was a decision called the Dred Scott decision. Most people think that infamous decision written by Roger Taney, it in essence said that Black people had no rights that white people were bound to respect. Most people don't even understand what that means. Here's what it meant. It meant that if you were a Black woman, you could be raped, and Black women were raped. It meant if you were a Black woman, you could be forced to bring to term the rapist's baby. Black women lost the right to control their bodies in the Dred Scott decision. So the true narrative is, in 2022, it's the first time all women lost that right. It was why Sojourner Truth so eloquently said, "Ain't I a woman?" And if people go back and know their history, it's all about interpretation. I said something else, Mike, that I want to make sure you hear and other people hear. Sometimes we live through things, we don't even see it. We don't understand it. It's not true that Black people have not exercised the power they had for economic development. Marion Barry is a great example of a Black mayor using his power to make multimillionaires. It happened. I lived through it. I saw it. I lived in Washington, D.C. Doni mentioned the great Maynard Jackson. If anybody know anything about Atlanta, the reason why Atlanta became the Mecca for Black people was what Maynard Jackson laid down. So the truth of the matter is that there have been times in our history where Black people have done exactly what we want them to do, but there's a price to be paid for that. And we as a community has to understand when people are willing to stand up and do the kind of things for us that we need to be done, we've got to support them. I'll end with this point. I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was Harold Washington. When he first got appointed to office, everybody that he was appointing was Black. And the white reporter said to him, "Why are you only appointing Black people in the first 4 or 5 appointments?" And his response was, "I'm not appointing Black people. I'm appointing the most qualified people I know who just happen to be Black." That's courage.
Wow.
Did we lose Mike?
No, he's playing with his phone.
Okay. And we have lots of examples of that. Do you know in Washington, D.C., Black people did something that's unbelievable. The Washington Post, one of the most powerful newspapers in America. Washington Post told Black people, do not vote for Marion Barry. Gave us all the reason why. We defied that. And Marion Barry got elected. And here's something that I want to say to people in Baltimore City. But I applaud the Baltimore City voters. Their Black voters are most smarter than we give them credit for. Do you know that Dave Smith, Sinclair Broadcasting, was trying to buy the election? He spent more money than David Trone did trying to promote his candidate, Sheila Dixon. And Black people didn't buy into it. They didn't buy into
but he did get us with the term limit. We voted against our own interests with the term limits, which was a David Smith concoction. And they even used red, black, and green posters around town. Made me sick to my stomach.
But what they wanted was the ability to control who was going to be the mayor. They thought because they were successful with Ivan Bates, they could be successful again. But again, Black people in the city of Baltimore, you know, there are times we just have to give credit to our people when they do the right thing. And I think that they did the right thing, in my opinion.
Mr. Snowden, when did you know this was your purpose?
I was at a very young age. I was blessed to be influenced by Malcolm X. I tell people this story all the time. I when it was in the 10th grade, and I was required to read 2 chapters in the Autobiography of Malcolm X and to give a report the next day. I was going to flip through it, just kind of wing it. I picked up the Nightmare. The first chapter in the book is called Nightmare. I couldn't put it down. I was absolutely mesmerized by
That's
Malcolm.
when he was out in Nebraska and the people came, the Klan came.
And it's also when he said his favorite white teacher
told him he wouldn't amount to nothing.
No, there's white. They went around the room and asked kids, mostly white,
what they want to do,
and they gave all kinds of answers. When they got to Malcolm, Malcolm said, "I'd like to be a lawyer." And his favorite white teacher said to him, "Now, Malcolm, you got to be realistic. You're a nigger, and people like you because you're good with your hands. You ought to be a carpenter." And Malcolm said that so affected him that in 8th grade he dropped out of school. Can you imagine being told in front of white kids that you're a nigger and you have to be realistic? Well, I related.
That's called childhood trauma. They got stuff out there for it called trauma.
Yes.
What's your trauma score?
Right.
Childhood adversity, something, blah, blah, blah.
Here's a practicality that I can tell you. Here's a practicality that people watching this program will tell you. It'll happen so many times, and very few people know what to do when this happens. Suppose for a moment, Doni, you were working for government and whatever you were doing in government, and you had a supervisor who either died, became incapacitated, etc., and you were appointed to fill that position on a temporary basis. And you did a great job. Everybody's talking about how great the job you're doing. You start telling your wife that because you're now making more money, you're going to take her and the kids on some vacation spot. And the powers to be decide they're going to advertise the position that you are currently in. And they select a white person over top you. Although you've had the experience, you've been doing a great job, they select a white person over you, and they say the following to you. We want you to train the person.
I'll be damned.
And do you know how many black people who put in that position who have to swallow hard and train that person?
I'll be damned.
Yeah.
I'm going to start a BeMoreNews.com and find a way to feed myself. I'll be damned.
You are unique in that. The vast majority of our people.
I saw a cat have to do that, and they still fired him.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say his name because y'all know him. He had to train his replacement, and the replacement barely had a GED.
That's true.
You got to be out your cotton picking mind. You think I'm gonna train him?
Right. But there are people who will tell you it happens.
Here's my paper. Have a great day.
You know, there are people who all too often find themselves in that situation. And here's another one. Think of this for a second. This is 2024. Let's stick with the present. We ain't got to go to the past. You in Texas, and your loved one has been murdered by a white man, a white supremacist. That white supremacist has been tried and convicted by his peers, a jury that found him guilty. He's did every appeal he could, and all the courts have upheld in Texas that he committed murder. The governor of Texas, a man named Abbott, decides to pardon this man who was part of what was called the Black Liberation Movement. He was an activist. And the white man that killed him is pardoned. And you in Texas, and you see your loved one, murderer, walk away. What do you do? And black people find themselves in that position in 2024, not dissimilar from what they found in 1924, where the court system did not work for them, nor did the political system. So we face the possibility of going back to those days, and we've got to do what we need to do.
Pray to God he don't outrun karma in this lifetime.
Right. Well, and also that our
like
children,
Trump.
Right. But
I
Trump,
hope to see it because it's coming, baby.
You will. You will.
It's coming.
You're right about Trump. That's going to
It's coming.
And if
you can't be ugly like that and not give repercussion. He's just too ugly in his spirit.
Yeah. And you know how many people going to jail under Trump? People who was Trump loyalists. Steve Bannon is now about to go to jail. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Dr. King once said, truth crushed to the earth will rise again. And every time they think that they've destroyed us or been able to wipe us out, we rise again. We're an amazing.
Still I rise.
Yes, we're amazing people, Donnie. And the only thing that we need to do collectively, all of us, particularly Black men in particular, is take our rightful place in this world. You're not nobody's boy. You're not supposed to be subordinate to anyone. We have incredible strength as a people, and we need to be able to exhibit courage. You know, there once was this fellow that I knew who said it takes courage to drink from the cup of courage. And that's true. But once you drink from that cup of courage, you lose all fear of anybody or anything. That's an incredible thing.
One of my favorite stories about courage, since we're talking about famous books, and I know, like you, this book here, Motive, I couldn't put it down. I read it in 3 days. I never read a book like that before. But I tell you, I read a story about a man in Maryland. Mm-hmm. His name was Frederick Douglass. And they sent him down to the woodshed to meet Mr. Covey. Mr. Covey was what they called a nigger breaker.
Yeah.
But Mr. Covey found out who the real nigger was and who really got their back broke. And it wasn't Frederick Douglass. Matter of fact, he bent him over. He broke his back. He broke Covey's back. So yeah, what a famous story. He went from being enslaved to the ambassador to Haiti, to an advisor, a presidential advisor.
Donna, you will love this Frederick Douglass story. And for the viewers who don't know this, of course, Frederick Douglass was from Maryland. Of course, he was on a plantation on Maryland's Eastern Shore. But here's what most people don't know about Frederick Douglass. His mother was enslaved, but they didn't live on the same plantation. His mother lived on a plantation approximately 12 miles from where he existed. And his mother, at a very early age, said to her slave owner, will you allow me to go to visit my son, Frederick, who lives on this plantation? She said, you can do it but there are two conditions. One, you must do all of the chores, all the work. And for people who understand slavery was from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. And then secondly, she said to her, you must be back by a certain time. So imagine a woman, Frederick Douglass' mother, walking 12 miles to see her son. 12 miles. And when she gets to see him, there are only three things she can do. One, she can hug him. Two, she can kiss him. And thirdly, she places him in her lap. And then she has to go back 12 miles in order to meet the time requirements.
What'd she say to him?
And it was Frederick Douglass who said of this experience. Frederick Douglass said there were three things that he understood. One, he knew that he had a mother. And don't take that lightly. Most slaves did not know who their parents were because they were taken and sold. But he knew he had a mother. He knew he had somebody to care for him. And the second thing he said he got out of that experience with his mother was when she set him on her lap, he felt like a prince sitting on a throne. And it changed his views forever who he was as a person. So Frederick Douglass, the man you described, Donnie, was a man that was shaped by his mother, a woman who loved him so that she would walk 24 miles just to be able to hug him. Can you imagine in Baltimore City, as an example, if you had a mothers who took children, hugged them, told them, you're a prince, you can be anything you want, what that could do to impact on their thinking and their behavior. There are young people in Baltimore and elsewhere who are dying at ages of 16 and 17 and 18, some who don't believe they will ever see 21. Well, when you have people like that, it's because people who are supposed to be providing them with hope and a vision that their life will be better is not existing. So every time I go to a graduation, whether it's at Morgan State University, Compton, or wherever, I watch old Black people because you can learn so much from paying attention to your elders. And the most proudest people at any graduation is not, I repeat, it's not the man or woman that's graduating. It's those elders who are in the back who knows that what this graduation symbolizes, not for the individual, but for the future. And so every time I see somebody walk across a stage, whether it's Morehouse or Morgan or Spelman, I know that in part they're walking because old Black women and Black men who are praying for this day and they see it to come. It's an emotional moment for me. I just love the fact that we have in our society today Black people, particularly elderly Black people, who understand that for those who say there have been no progress in America, if they talk to my mother, who's now passed at 104, she would look at them and say, "Are you crazy?" My mother grew up at a time, Doni, that women didn't have the right to vote. My mother lived through an apartheid-style American system. My mother saw firsthand what it meant to raise 9 children. 9 children. And I'm the first of my group to graduate from a college. And I mean, I know what my mother, the sacrifices that she made. And mother,
somebody prayed for me.
That's right.
Had me on their mind.
That's right.
Took the time and prayed for me. They thanking you all over the place here, Mr. Snowden.
Thank you.
I'm so glad they prayed.
Do you remember the Black woman that Dr. King spoke of? It was an 80-some-year-old Black woman who, when the bus boycott was going on in 1955, she had to walk to work. She worked for a white woman, and she was a maid. And these white kids, young people, came by, and they just kept on teasing her, saying to her, "Auntie," because you never called a Black woman that day by her real name. "Hey, Auntie, ain't you tired of walking? It's August, it's hot, it's sweltering. Don't you want to get a ride?" they say. And that old Black woman looked at them and said, "My feet are tired, but my soul is rested." That was the kind of spirit that we had at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, where Black people were willing to make sacrifices. People talk about the death of Malcolm and Martin, but Doni, you know, there's so many Black people who died. Jimmy Jackson, 18 years old, murdered, defending his mother. People don't even know what the march, what they call Bloody Sunday, was all about. If you get a chance, you should Google Jimmy Jackson and watch Jimmy Jackson, who was murdered by a state trooper in Alabama because he would not allow his mother to be beaten. Incredible story.
We thank you for taking the time out
Thank
to
you,
share
sir.
with us one more time. Thank you for allowing me to be here to be the journalist.
Thank you.
And
I
we
look
can't wait to have you
forward
again.
Right. I look forward to it. And one of the things I'm hoping, and I'll help you with this, you should have Governor Amore come on the program, and I'll be happy to help facilitate that.
He came on during this campaign. We've not had him on since he's been governor.
Well, I will mention to him, we have an upcoming meeting with him, that he should come on because, again, Governor Moore is in a position to be able to inspire a whole new generation of activists and young people, and I hope he will.
Good deal. Up to date, down tomorrow, do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it.
Thank you, my brother. God bless.
Regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Good morning, world.
God bless.